for the most part. She left my dad when I was like 2 or 3, and pretty much kind of kept me separate from that lifestyle, which I hated growing up. But now that I'm an adult and I have kids, I do kind of understand. It's still kind of hurtful, but as parents, you do things to keep your kids safe, and you're just living the first time with them. So, my dad, we didn't really have much of a relationship. I was around his family, like his dad and his stepmom, but there's still like a break in that family dynamic of don't let her go here, don't let her go there. When I was fixing to graduate, I passed a note to an aunt that worked at the school with me, and I was like, I want to get in touch with my dad. So I passed her a note, and she sent it to him, and the very first of the note said, "Do not call my house."
Oh no. So he calls,
The
right?
very first thing that he does was to call my house. My mom answered. She freaked out. But I was like 16, 17. I was close to 18 at that point. And I was a cheerleader, and my main thing was like, I just wanted to know him. You just want to know who they are. So I got to know him, and then he walked me out on the field for my senior night. And then pretty soon right after that, I started noticing, like the very next day, he was heavy into alcohol. I mean, I showed up where I was supposed to be, and he was asleep on the couch. And I was so just naive that I had no idea about drugs, alcohol, anything. Like, it was completely always kept away from us. So in my mind, I was like, oh, he's just tired. He's traveled. But then when he woke up, it was different than what I was around. Yeah. So my boyfriend at the time was just like, I don't like this. You know, they were super, super religious. And I just was like, I don't really know what's going on, you know. So I kind of went with that, but I had this tug at my heart. And I just kept hearing this thing say, if something happens, if something happens. And I remember talking to him the night before saying, I just feel like something bad is going to happen. And I was at work the next day, and I got a phone call that my dad had passed away. So the initial text message I got, I don't know how much I can say, but the initial text message that I got was, your dad shot himself and shot his wife. Come to find out that his wife was not shot. But even during all of that, I was thinking, okay, like in the foot,
right.
Like, it never registered to me that it would be detrimental. So of course I'm trying to get all of the information. Nobody's really telling me anything. I really wasn't supposed to have gotten that text message. And I know that some people were upset about it, but it's like, I needed to, like, when were they going to tell me, you know?
How long did you even know him?
Not very long. Like within, maybe not even a full year. Probably really only like 6 months, because it was like my senior year of graduating, and then right after that, the following March. So he passed away, and then that sent me into just a tailspin. At that point, I had broken off my engagement. I'd met my ex-husband now at the time through all of that, the funeral stuff and everything. So he moved to Florida, and I didn't even think twice about it. I was just like, I packed my stuff and I left. So I get to Florida, and then that turns into kind of like the best and the worst times of my life, because I met some of the best people. My best friend, her name is Josie, and I don't think that if I would have met her, I probably would have just stayed there and
dealt with.
Yeah, I don't know how things would have been, but meeting her and just her loving me the way that she did, and just showing me, all the things, and I was just like a child still. I mean, you're 18, 19, but like,
you're still a kid.
Especially when something that traumatic happens to you, it does something to you, and then you throw yourself into another state with no family, no friends, no nothing.
No
I would never do that now.
Yeah.
I think you really just, something happens in your mind, and it's just like
reckless,
you're running
maybe?
For your life.
Yeah.
And I think at that time too, it was just like, I have to get out of here. So I left. That was awful. Many years of just like domestic abuse, physical, mental, financial, all of it. I got pregnant. I moved back to Tennessee because,
with him?
Yes.
Okay.
I got pregnant with him. Moved back to Tennessee, and I thought, well, if we get married, it'll fix things. That's the worst idea. So we come back, and we do end up getting married after like 2 or 3 years. And at this point, so we'd been together for almost like 9 or 10. And the whole time it was just, traumatic turmoil. So when I was in high school, I said I wanted to work at Tennessee Eye Care. So I decided, I was going to come back and try to get a job down here and just like make something for myself. So I was working on this house with my grandpa. We were going through the divorce, separation, all of that stuff, which took forever.
Yeah.
And during all of that, I did get that job at Tennessee Eye Care where I met my now husband. We were both we were just friends, you know.
Yeah.
It's like the Lord just
Put you
brings
guys
people
together.
into your life, you know. That was a dream that I had when I was in high school, and his mom actually worked at Tennessee Eye Care. So then when she left, he came in there. So it's just weird how
But you were
that
always
just,
drawn there.
yeah.
Always drawn there.
Mhm.
And then you came back. You went there. Wow.
Yeah. So after that, me and my husband get married, and pretty soon after we get pregnant, we have a miscarriage, which was awful, and that kind of sent me a little bit right back to, you know, the grief and
Yeah.
all of that, and stirs up a lot more because I don't think that I ever
That
really
with your dad.
No, because I went straight from that to I have to get out of here, and then I was running for my life to get away from just the terrible things, and then I get there, and then it was a whole different kind of crazy terrible, and then we come back, and my cousin, he goes missing. He didn't live the greatest life, but he also wasn't brought up in the greatest life.
He's
either.
doing the best he could with what.
I mean, his whole family on separate sides were involved in different things that just didn't help him necessarily. So I loved him more than anything. He was my first cousin, but he was like a brother to me. He was the only real connection I had to my dad for a long time. So we did get very close. And I remember when we were younger, we would switch clothes and then see if they could tell who was who because we looked so much alike.
That's awesome.
So he went missing. And then that right after the miscarriage, it was like I wasn't even fully healed from that.
Grief
and it
after
just,
grief.
yeah, it just sent me into a complete tailspin. And at first, when you have people that live that kind of lifestyle, they go missing for a little while and they're somewhere you wouldn't want them to be, but they're where they want to be.
They're on some type of binge or relationship thing.
And that's kind of what it was. He was in, toxic relationships back and forth, and he was with his mom, and then he also had other places. So he had been to Hawaii, he had been in Georgia, he had been in other areas. So I was thinking something may have happened and he's just on a run.
He was living in active addiction.
Yes. And come to find out, we looked and searched, and I mean to the point to where I would get in my car and I would just drive like old roads that we would go as like kids or like our family places, or
thinking maybe he'll be camped out somewhere. Or...
We went up on the mountain to the Star. We hiked that whole area. I was doing side things that probably most of the family didn't even know that I was doing, just trying to get any information I could. And of course they were probably getting more information, and I know that the police were too, but when you're in that situation, you just feel so helpless.
So you'll just do anything to find anything.
Yeah. And never really at that point in my mind, I was like, I'd called a rehab in Florida because I had been in Florida. So I had connections down there, and I was like, I'm going to do this, and he's going to do it whether he likes it or not. And in my mind, I was like, I'm going to find him. He's going to be strung out. I'm going to lock him in my car, and we're just going to go straight to Florida. I had bags packed and everything.
You wanted to rescue him.
I did. And I know that they have to want to be rescued, but what happened to him was just beyond anything anybody could have ever imagined. He was taken by his friends, and he didn't know that they were paid to take care of him. So they got a certain amount of money, which turned out at the end to not be exactly what they thought it was going to be. But from my understanding, and we're still in court stuff.
How long ago was this?
3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So it may have been closer to 5 now, about 4 years. So we're just trying to figure out what is going on, who is he connected with, and who is he, what is going on. So we start trying to find and making all of these connects, and I have another family member that's like really able to get in and talk to these people, and they give information, and they would rather give it to somebody like us than the police because they don't want to get themselves in trouble. And for us, it's like, I don't really care what you're doing.
Yeah, they're not
just
trying to get
help
subpoenaed.
me find him.
Yeah,
So we ended up he was found in a trailer. They had beaten him in a home while he was not expecting it. tortured, just put him in the back of a vehicle, took him up the mountain, left him in a trailer. And then some people did go back and were apparently going to try to burn it, but got spooked and left. It has since been burned because it was in such terrible shape. I have a really good friend that her family has like a wrecker service, and they came to help with the situation. And it was so bad that she said even he couldn't even talk about it. Like, it was just a terrible situation. And you see on Dateline in 2020 and all of this where people are like, you would never expect something like that to happen. But like, you really would never expect something like that to happen. And truthfully, as horrible as it is, I really thought, we all thought we would just get a phone call that he had overdosed. And honestly, I kind of wish that was the case. I know that that's still terrible, but in my mind, I think that would be
him.
Yeah. He was with zip ties, and like he had he was bound. I mean, it was bad.
How long do you think he lived through that?
Hopefully not long. And this is another thought. I'm not a drug addict, so I don't really know how this stuff works. And I know that we don't want people to be on drugs, but in my mind, I was just like, I hope that he was. I wanted him to not be sober-minded for that, if that was the case. They tried to hide the scene. They found a stray animal and tried to make it look like the animal passed away in there. Of course, you can tell the difference between that. There was other statements from people that were there. And like I said, I can't really say for certain things because we are still in court. But there was hearsay that he was stomped. They did take a pair of boots in and look at him. When they took his body to, be assessed and whatnot, it took way longer than I would ever expect. But you have to look at the fact that he was there for months before anybody found him.
Okay.
Because I mean, he didn't really just go missing. Like, he went with those friends. They were hanging out. They were doing something at a house in Rockwood. He was hanging out with people. There was multiple people there, women, men, people that he thought was his friends. And then they made fun of what he looked like while he was being
That's terrible.
abused.
And so people were witnessing this, and nobody stopped them.
Mm-mm. No, and I mean, I try to put myself in situations where I'm like, if I was there, because I'm a terrified person. I mean, if something's happening, but at the same time, if you call me and tell me that your husband's beating on you, I'll show up with a baseball bat.
Yeah, that's what's up.
But I just don't think you really know how to get through stuff like that when it's. And one of the things is that it plays through my head,
like what it would have looked like.
Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't know. But I mean, as a woman, I'm just like, I don't know how you could. I couldn't watch somebody abuse an animal, let alone a human or a child. And especially if you're my friend.
And they're all just.
I mean, and then you think, I put myself in those situations and I'm like, what if they were scared?
And maybe
they were scared what would happen to them. But I do know that there were people that left the house to go to the next door to get zip ties and things to come back. You had the opportunity to leave.
Yeah.
Or at least get help. I mean, even if it didn't save him, you had the opportunity. It's just a really sad situation, and unfortunately getting into that world brings that kind of thing. When we were talking about where all this drug ring leads to, I mean, it is states. It is a wide range. I don't think people realize, like, these little, like, people see people out here doing drugs or doing exchanges and stuff, and I don't think that people realize
that's coming from somewhere else, and there's
there's a
whole industry,
huge thing that goes into it. It's not just
there's
Joe Schmo from down the street. I mean, scary people.
There's bosses. There's it's the cartel. There's gangs. There's there's a lot of money involved, and they have their own ways of dealing with things, and it's scary.
And I mean, unfortunately, that is the situation that Quinton was in. He allegedly, because I don't know, had stolen a safe that had things in it. Money, drugs, potential guns. I'm not really sure. It had a lot of things in there that was worth a lot of money. So that was obviously wrong.
Not worth his life.
No, but that's how they work.
Yeah.
So you take from me and I'll take from you. And the other sad part is, I'm sure that there's a lot that I don't know. But there were several instances that happened with this. Like he was beaten, like he was sleeping in like a camper at one point.
Yeah.
And Quinton used to always like wear a sweatshirt and like tuck his arms inside the shirt
Yeah.
and pull his hood down to sleep. And they woke him up like that, brass knuckles and stuff. And there's videos. So it's like there's a lot of people that were just like okay with this happening. And I think that you just almost like doctors and nurses, like you just become okay with the things that are happening because that's just your life.
Yeah,
like
that's
these
the
people, they just
culture.
become okay with it because that's just what they're living in. And some of them, they were brought up in it, you know? So it's a really sad situation. So at this point, during all of that, right before Quinton had passed away, I ran into him, but he was so deep into addiction, I was mad.
Yeah.
So I ran into him at the Dollar General, and I had my little boy with him, and he had his little boy, and I could tell he was high, and I was mad because I was like, you have your kid with you. I mean, other people were there. He wasn't driving. But I was just like, I cannot understand how you cannot get it together. But then he died. And
And
then
that was
all
your
of that,
last.
like, I was like, I should have hugged him.
Yeah, you didn't know.
No, you don't know, but then it makes you think for the next person, you know? So I did go to Rockwood. I've had many of my classmates that have went to prison, got out, and have found reform. And it's such an amazing journey to watch and like witness and experience with them at times. But I also know that it's difficult, you know? I mean, you
Get
have
out
to,
of that.
once you start using drugs at a young age, it alters your mind and you're stuck at that age. I mean, you can try, but I mean, even having conversations with people, you can tell that they're stunted at a certain age, especially when they've done hard drugs for so long. And then you take them straight out of that and then you put them in prison. And some of the prisons don't even have help for them.
Or that environment in the prisons, it's supposed to be punishment, yes, and for public safety. But like I've said many times, 97% of people will get out. And if they're racked up even more traumas and they're not getting any type of counseling, rehabilitation, then sitting in there is they're going to come out even worse.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I would love, I don't even know where to start. But through that, I'm like, everything happens for a reason. And it's hard to think about those reasons. And it's still hard because I don't want to think like he died to help me do this. But if I can use that to potentially help other people with their reform or to help bring awareness to the situations or bring awareness to these aren't just small drug gangs. Like you get wrapped up in these almost like an MLM and you don't realize
You can't get out.
Yeah, there is no getting out. I mean, even if you flee the state, sometimes there is no getting out. But if I can bring any awareness, if I can bring any help, if I can love somebody through their addiction, one of the things that I said in my speech at his funeral was, you know, everybody talks about tough love, and that's what I thought I was doing. And a lot of people, even counselors and stuff, they're like, oh, they preach the tough love, and to each their own. But for me personally, I feel like it wasn't worth it. Me not giving him a hug that day because I was giving him tough love was not worth it because in the end it hurt me. I'm the one dealing with it, you know? And I'm still seeing that or watching his son grow up without him. And I know that I couldn't have saved him necessarily, but I could have been there to love him through it, you know? And I have other friends, other people that I went to high school with that are still struggling. And I talk to them every day. I want to help them. It is such a struggle because you want to save everybody, especially when you've lost somebody.
And you think, well, you might die, just quit using it. It's like there is literally a biological dependency that they have on these drugs. These drugs have such a stronghold on them. And what people don't understand is that this isn't a lack of will. This isn't a lack of a moral compass. This is a biological disease and people need help. If somebody was, dying of cancer, we'd love on them. And I know with addiction, it comes some consequences. It comes with, sometimes theft and lying and a whole different lifestyle. But I like how you talked about maybe not doing the tough love thing and interviewing different people a gentleman that I interviewed a few weeks ago actually across the street, and he lost his daughter to overdose, and just how he just continued to love her and just continued to love her. But we just started talking over this last probably really the last probably 5 or 6 years about drug addiction and overdose. And before it was like taboo, like people just didn't really talk about it. And really, I think it's because opioids hit such a higher socioeconomic population that it was no longer just a poor person problem or just a African American problem. It was an everyone problem, and because of that, there's been a lot more. I believe because of that, we have a lot more resources, but we're not talking about it enough. I feel like for what's ahead.
Oh, I agree. And I feel like part of the problem too is, you know, we talk about this and it's like, oh, well, they should know better. But a lot of these people, they were introduced to this at 10, 12, 13 years old.
Sometimes by their own parents.
Exactly. And sometimes it's hard drugs like injectables. I mean, and your parents are involved in that, you know? And I mean, if you grow up in that, you don't have, you can't grasp anything different.
No.
You know, it's like if you grow up in church your whole life and then somebody tells you, oh, that's fake. You're like, okay, you grew up in it. You
It's
believe
their
that.
norm. It's
Yeah.
the foundation. I see a lot at the jails where girls will be locked up like with their own mom or something, and it is just very, very generational. And a friend of mine told me that she just heard a statistic about Harriman, that Harriman has per capita one of the highest addiction rates in Tennessee. And I was like, I thought it would have been Memphis or something, but I guess per capita, I think I can't remember if it's opioid addiction or just drug addiction or what. And it's just crazy to think like right here in Roane County, Tennessee, that we have such a problem. And I'm really glad that we do have like the Roane County Anti-Drug Coalition because we need the preventative, and they are in the schools every single day. But when I grew up, like we had DARE. Did you ever have DARE? And I liked DARE, but that, you know, there was only like once a month they'd come in.
And even then it wasn't like, when I look back on it, it was like, don't do drugs, color this picture. You know, it was a fun time for us. Like we enjoyed them coming in because we weren't doing anything that day or during that time period. You know, it was like, oh, thank God DARE's here. We're gonna just. It didn't resonate with us what that even meant or what, like, because growing up, drugs are bad. You know that. Like you're told drugs are bad, but like you don't realize all the different classifications.
Well, I think what really hit our generation was the prescription. Over and over, it's usually
overprescribed.
Somebody got sick and they got a prescription, or their parents got sick and they took their parents' prescription. And that's a lot of times where it starts, and it's not a drug because it's prescribed by a doctor. When I was in the Marine Corps, something minor had happened and I'd gotten hurt, and the doctor prescribed me one of those really powerful ones, and it was like a month prescription, and I was running up towards the end and I started freaking out. Because what I didn't realize is I was already showing signs of addiction.
You're addicted before you even realized.
I didn't even know it. And I went to the doctor, medical, and I was like, hey, I'm almost out of this prescription. I have to have more. And he was like, oh, this is highly addictive substance and you're showing signs of addiction and I'm not prescribing you anymore. And I mean, I didn't find it
for him.
And I was like, oh my, I'm addicted already. And so
it would have been very easy. I remember when I got my wisdom teeth taken out when I was in high school, they gave me whatever you go home with, and then you go back so many days later. I don't know, I was out of it a lot, but you know, you go back several days later, and then I had like a dry socket, so then they had to do whatever there, and then they gave me more, and my mom was watching them, and I remember her saying like, and then after the second round, they tried to call me in a third, and she was like, no, I don't even want these in the house. Like, and I mean, even people that I went to high school with that you would never consider them doing anything like that. It's so easy to just be like, oh, I've got a headache. Oh, my mom takes this. And then before you know it, you don't realize that you've developed this addiction to something, and you have a headache every day. Or, you know, you're throwing pitches and your shoulder hurts, or you're doing stunts and you've hurt your back or whatever. And it's like, you're just taking these, and sometimes your parents just give it to you.
So my mom, she was really addicted to opioids. She was very heavily overprescribed. I can't believe how many prescriptions they would give that woman. She was like a walking medicine cabinet in her purse, and she just had it was pretty much like unlimited. And I remember she would try to give me pills, and I remember thinking like, why are you trying to hand me a pill? And She was diagnosed with terminal cancer, survived the cancer, but came out with a horrible opioid addiction. The last 2 years of her life, I couldn't even communicate with her because she was just so difficult to deal with. Then she found the bottle towards the end, so then she was mixing the opioids with the bottle. She would start drinking at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would get a drunk dial by 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I remember looking down at my daughter one day as I'm being screamed on the phone, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. But it's bondage. It's all bondage. I don't know if the hard drugs are ever going to go away. You know, it might just be like this until Jesus comes back. It just seems like it's just completely out of control. I don't even know how you could even.
I feel like, and I could be wrong because I don't know the statistics, but I feel like it is way overpowering the alcoholism as well. I mean, and you would think alcohol should, not that it should be, but it would be easier to get, and I would think. But it just seems like even the kids in high school and stuff, they're bypassing the alcohol and they're just going straight to the hard stuff.
You can get it at the gas station.
I've been seeing stuff like that.
Those little
Cromptons or
those
something.
blue bottles, feel free. People are going to rehab left and right over them.
I've been seeing so
It
many
mimics
things.
the same feelings of opioids. And you remember they have those 5-hour energies right there at the register? They're doing the same thing with that. Kratom, the THC, all types of synthetic stuff. Sometimes you almost have to walk through like displays just to get to the counter where there's more displays.
And you think about, and then you take your small children in there, and
they look cute and fun, and they have fun colors, and that's all intentional. And it's just crazy to think what they are up against. You know, when we took DARE, they'd be like, someone might offer you like cocaine or something one day. And it's like, you got to worry about.
Well, now you have to worry about somebody putting fentanyl in a drink that you're drinking.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, anything. That I would be so terrified to be taking something. And I say that because I've never been in those shoes, but it's like personally, like I remember my cousin Quinton. I called him when we were in middle school because I knew he kind of dabbled in things. And I had taken a Benadryl and like a Tylenol PM, and I was like, I'm afraid I'm going to overdose. And he was like, you are not going to overdose. Those are not even the same drug classifications. You're probably just going to sleep for a long time.
Yeah.
But like that's how terrified I am of that stuff. But then you add in like the fentanyl on top of it, where it could be in anything.
Oh, you can't smoke straight marijuana. There's just fentanyl in everything. And the kids are eating gummies, starting in elementary school and taking them to school in their backpacks. And some of these schools, like, they're trained really well, but some of these, I hate to say it, some of these private schools are not so trained. You know, some kids are right there popping a gummy, and
well, if you don't know what you're looking for, they look like a regular. They look most of the time. I mean, unless you really look at it, or if you just like glance candy. Past. Yeah. I mean, and that's what's scary having little kids too. You know, because they just see candy.
So you start using THC gummies in elementary school, and then you're going to want more. You're going to want more, and more. And then what's going to happen by the time you're in high school? And so dealing with this, it's a pandemic of, you know, the gummies and the opioids. And I read somewhere that, well, by securing the border, yes, that's going to help with the fentanyl, but there's a prediction that meth production, hometown meth production is going to actually go up, because it had gone down because of all the drugs that they were able to get in. But now that there's a prediction that, you know, cooking at locally might come back, increase. And like I said, like, I don't know when this is going to buff out, if it ever will, or if this is just how it's going to be till Jesus comes back. But well, we live in a fallen world. Gosh, this is such a downer conversation. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
The fact is, we live in a fallen world. And you had talked about your dad. He had died from self-inflicted wounds.
Well, it was portrayed as that, yes. But we think that his wife was involved.
Okay. My brother died of self-inflicted wounds a few years ago, and that was the grief that came from that was unexpected. And he lived on the other side of the country. You know, it's not like we talked every day. But just when someone that you love dies and it's very traumatic and gruesome, there's something
Unexpected.
about
Yeah.
it. And that's something that you've experienced more than once. And not being there, wondering what their emotions were like at the very end, and then just reliving that. It's like when someone else, your sweet old grandma passes, and she's with the Lord and she lived a fruitful, beautiful life. That kind of funeral, and that's just such a different feeling than someone dying of overdose, or someone dying of self-inflicted wounds, or just the mystery of it all.
Mhm.
Their death ends up in a courtroom,
Yeah.
to be debated by a jury and a
you have to just
judge.
relive it over and over and over again with the details and stuff. And luckily ours has been pretty quick. I mean, obviously this was all going on during COVID too, so that shut the courthouse down and stuff. But I think about like Shannon Christian and Chris Newsom's family and parents, how they've had to go so many times back and forth to court and relive that traumatic situation over and over too. And it's just like, we want the justice for it. We want to do what we can, but I can't. Originally, I was so angry, and I still am. But I'd said, the specific people, there's specific people in this case that I was like, when they get sent to a prison, I just want to go have a conversation. And I mean, nothing crazy, but it's like, I just
Closure.
want to know.
Yeah.
I just want to know. And I mean, and at the time I was thinking this, I was like, and I'm going to say some mean things too, but you're just in that thought process. But it's like, I can't want to go into the jails and talk to these people and help and reform certain people, but not others. There is a difference in the crimes, there's a huge difference in the crimes, but people can change. And I mean, I can't just completely cut one whole group of people off if I'm wanting to help people in general, So I'm trying to work through that as best as I can. And I'm hoping that maybe at some point, maybe I can have a conversation with them, and really, truly nothing that they can say is going to make anything better. But maybe just hearing a genuine, I'm sorry, I didn't want it to be like this, or I was stuck in this situation, or I didn't know what to do. I can see how people can get stuck in a bad situation. I'm not saying that it's okay. I could never do that. But I mean, we've all seen movies where you're like, what would I do? I don't know. I don't know what I would do. You're just so stuck.
It's easy sometimes to think, well, if I was in that situation, I'd be a hero and I'd go and do this. And then it's like, you're in this crazy situation. You don't want it to go on, but you can't, you just feel like you have to shut up and you just have to go with it. And it's like a fight or flight almost.
Mm-hmm.
And then you pretty much have to live with the shame of that for the rest of your life. And I imagine whoever witnessed that, if they are in sober-minded moments, they will have to live with that, one way, shape, or form. And that's a lot to carry.
And I mean, to me, it's just like, if you're going to do something that awful, there's quicker ways to go about it. It didn't have to be drug out. Like, that is just like, see, and I do teeter on this because I'm like, you have to be an evil person to be able to carry it out. Like, again, I'm not saying that it's okay, but I could see how you could just pull a gun out and shoot somebody in being scared or whatever the situation is. Or even in that situation, not that it's okay, but like, that would be more understanding than.
The torture has to be like the worst.
And just to think of, and now I have a son, and I have little girls, and I mean, even when they're crying, they've got a diaper rash or something. I mean, I just cannot bear the sound of them crying, because I don't know, it does something to me.
There's like a connection.
Makes me feel like, even if I'm doing something that they need done, like changing their diaper, it's like I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And then I think, what was he thinking? Like, how awful was that? And that it is sad, but I want my son to learn from that. I hope that his son learns and grows from that, and not in a mean way, but just like, let's really try not to go down those same footsteps.
I see on Facebook a lot of times people will post things like, don't judge the addict that's in recovery, or even they're not even in recovery yet, because they might be the ones that pull your kids out of drug addiction one day.
Yeah.
And I try to talk to the kids about drugs all the time and sharing stories with them. And but I know it could take just one friend one night at a party and is like, hey, let's go, let's mix this. And before you know it, or you think they're at a sleepover, but they're really doing something different. And so I try not to be like, oh, well, I'm educated on drugs and all that. And I told my kids, so we're good. Like, I know, like, at any moment, one prescription, one party, one whatever, that our kids can go down that path. And I was listening, talking to the dentist a couple weeks ago over at Gates Hall at that interview. And I mean, he would try to hunt his daughter down and everything. You can only do so much.
And then when they become an adult, I mean, your hands are tied.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's kind of why I said, like when I was talking about picking Quinton up, like I had the child locks on my car and everything. I was like, he will not get out of this car. I will not even stop to get gas. Like, we will just go straight there. As soon as I can stop where he can't go anywhere, then we'll stop.
Yeah.
But I mean, it didn't work out like that. And I mean, even if I would have done that, what would that have done? That's kidnapping.
Yeah, you might have been in jail.
I mean, really, I probably would have been in trouble for similar situations because you can't just take somebody. I mean, and that's what I have a friend that's a police officer in Knoxville, and I've known him pretty much my whole life. We went to church. I was a camper, and he was like a counselor at this church camp. And then as I grew, I became a counselor, and we just always stayed close with each other. And during all of this, he knew I was going places I shouldn't be and talking to people that I shouldn't be. I mean, because somebody had told me. And then another person had reached out that said they were like a psychic or something and said that he was at this place in Knoxville. And really, even if you don't believe in stuff like that, you're grasping at any straws you can. Like, okay, maybe she's affiliated and she just knows. I don't know.
Yeah.
So he was kind of helping man the Knoxville streets for me to keep me out of that, because he was like, you cannot come up here. Like, there are certain areas you cannot be in. Like, you will get yourself hurt.
Yeah.
You will not come back, kind of thing.
I mean, so you were like going straight up to the hood and all types of places, rough places.
Yeah. I mean, mostly
trap houses, wherever.
Anywhere I could drive by and yell his name or connect with somebody that I knew he was friends with that might give me some information. And I did get some. Like I said, I did have family members that were a little bit more involved that were able to get stuff like
if y'all hadn't pressed the way you did, who knows how long he would have been there.
I think it was being investigated by one, and then they ended up transferring it to another detective in the middle of it. And I don't think there was any real reason, anything bad that happened for that. But it was just, I think it started wrapping a bunch of people in, because you've got first you've got a murder, and then you've got the drugs that go along with it, and then who put the hit out and who did this, and then it starts getting really big before you know it. And we did get some people arrested that were higher up on the totem pole during the thing. But I mean, I didn't have any connections with these people. I didn't know these people or anything. And I mean, just to look them up on Facebook, I mean, it's scary.
Yeah, but he was wrapped up with all them.
I don't know that he knew that he was as wrapped up with it as it was, because and I'm not saying that he wasn't intelligent or anything like that, but he had been in that for so long that I don't know that when you're living in it like that, unless you're dealing and doing all of the things, I don't know that you know how big it gets. Maybe you do. I don't know. I've never lived it. But in my mind, I'm just like, I can't imagine that he would do something so stupid and know what the outcome would be. Yeah. And but when you, like I said, when people are doing those drugs and stuff, you turn into a different person, as far as things that you would never do before are easy to do.
So they're on trial now?
We've got 2 that have been sentenced. We've got 1 that is wanting a trial.
Okay.
The other one's pled guilty.
Yeah.
So we were supposed to have it in November, and it got pushed. And this isn't the first time. It just keeps getting pushed.
Yeah.
But something will happen or it won't. I'm not going to just, eat myself alive over it, because I do have two other little girls. I've got a 13-year-old boy that he's doing his own thing. I've got my businesses that I'm trying to run. I've got, things that I'm trying to do. And if I can at some point, start doing something like this where I can interview people that are doing, coming out or just want to tell their story. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many people, and I truly believe that people just telling their story helps other people.
Well, you sharing this can help people in so many different ways. Everything from grief to hope of a life. You've had to rebuild your life, and you're blessed the way that God put you and your husband together, and you've got a beautiful family. But you've had to come back from a lot,
Yeah.
and you're still going through the ordeal with Quinton, and and then there's probably still going to be some grief after that.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that I do want to say is a lot of people, they see us on Facebook, not just all of us, the whole world. You see people on Facebook and you're like, oh, well, they're happy and they're this and they're that. But like, people don't see when it hits you in the middle of Walmart and you walk out in tears because you smelled a cologne that smells like somebody, or whatever. Or like when I was going through that stuff, like nobody's seen me not leaving my house other than to do that. And when I did leave, I was leaving in my pajamas and my robe.
Yeah.
Like, that's not me. I mean, I'll run down to my friend's house like that or something, but like I was like straight up leaving the house, like losing my mind.
Yeah.
Or just not eating for days. Not because I didn't want to, it's just something happens in you. Like, I don't think people realize, people look like they're doing okay online sometimes, and like reality is reality. I mean, like, grief is hard.
Yeah.
And it hits you over and over, and like you lose one person and that's hard, but then the more people you lose, it keeps taking you back a little bit.
It does. So my mom died, like, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago, and then a grandfather, and then my brother is my only blood sibling, and both times, like, I didn't even have a great relationship with my mom. She had actually called a mutual friend right before, well, a day before she died, and said, if anything ever happens to me, tell Laura I love her, and to keep an eye out. So it makes me wonder. And I never did see the death certificate to see if it was related to an overdose or not. She was heavy in the pills. And so the fact that she called a mutual friend right before it happened makes me think it was probably intentional. And so then the grief, then when my brother died by self-inflicted wounds, he was a combat veteran, multiple tours. Um, they even flew a flag over Iraq for him, like while he was in. The state of Tennessee flew a flag over the capital of Nashville, even though he's not even a resident here. He's from California, for him too. And then they gave me the flag. He really served his country honorably, and then went to help open one of the first vet centers in Northern California. For 13 years, he served vets day in and day out, helping vets that were battling with suicide and stuff like that. And it was just crazy because he had all the resources. Just like if someone's living in like a heavy drug addiction, they're around all the resources. My brother was at like the hub for veteran suicide prevention, and they decorated his door after he died, and he was just like, what? It's just like that thought got in his mind, and he just got completely bonded by darkness and dark thoughts, and he just couldn't get out of it. And he was always the one that people would call in the middle of the night when they're having those kind of thoughts. And one day he called me early in the morning. He had been having these thoughts for about 6 months. We even had him, he had to get picked up one day for a suicide attempt, and they brought him to the VA for 3 days, and he knew how to talk his way out of it, and then he like makeshift his own gun somehow. He was a gun guy, and even though they had taken all the guns that they believed he had, and he went on the back porch one day, and he called me earlier that morning and was like, sister, I love you, and I'm in so much pain, and there's nothing anyone could do. And I was just hoping he was just talking.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't do something you can't undo. And he was like, the pain's just too heavy, and I love you. And later that night, I had the most sickening feeling I've ever had. And there's nothing I could do to get that sick feeling out. And it was like maybe around 11 p.m. And I had seen a strange post from who his wife was at the time, and I was like, "That's weird." And then it was deleted right away. And then moments later, I got a phone call from the hospital in California, and they said, "I'm sorry to inform you, but your brother died of self-inflicted wounds."
Oh,
And I was like, "No!" And he had gone on the back porch and shot himself,
I'm so
which is
sorry.
crazy because his wife at the time called their pastor and said, "Steve's acting really weird. Will you go see him?" And the pastor got there not even 5 minutes after he had shot himself, because based on when the neighbors heard the gunshot and he showed up. So the pastor actually showed up first, and he was looking for him. He found him on the back patio. And it's just there. And, was it the grief, just all the grief of all the years? And I think he probably collected some secondary PTSD, helping the vets
Yeah.
all the time. And then the spiritual attacks. You're going in, anytime you're going in and trying to help people and heal them, you're going to get a lot of spiritual attacks. I'm going through a spiritual attack right now, and I think it's because we were meeting today. Sometimes, and I know it sounds crazy, but you're either going in a spiritual attack, or leaving a spiritual attack. So you just never really know. I believe everything's spiritual though,
Yeah.
but
Well, I
yeah.
mean, heck, it did. It's been like that for me too. My babysitter didn't answer this morning. My car didn't start.
I know. That's why when you were like having the hardest time getting here, I was like, I remember thinking like, to me it just sounds like a spiritual attack. It was like
I
one
know,
thing
but I
after
was like, I
another.
don't want her to think that I don't want to be there or that I'm just trying to like push her off. But I went outside and I was like, I called Ruth. I was like, oh, my car won't start.
Yeah, no, that probably spiritual attack or something of that nature. But well, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, not really. I don't think so. I don't know. I feel like it was just a really depressing segment for you.
Well, you know what? I didn't plan on sharing all those things like that or crying, but
But you know what? I think that's healing.
yeah,
It always doesn't have to be happy and upbeat for people. Sometimes they need to see the sad.
yeah. Well, and a lot of us, like you were talking about on social media, we always want to like, oh, life's so good, and I feel so. Oh, I wake up this way, and I wake up happy all the time, and it's like, well, no, not always. I always joke with some of my friends. I'm like, if you ever feel like praying for someone, you can pray for my spiritual attacks.
Yeah.
Because especially going in, I mean, the darkest places, like you're going in places that are just like infested with demons of the spirit world, and you're walking around with them. Shared with someone a couple months ago, one of the biggest mistakes, I've made a lot of mistakes, was I was in a women's prison doing ministry one day, and we were all in a big circle holding hands, and I was very zealous, and I was like, and I stand at intersection between this woman and anything of darkness. And it was like that next week, I mean, everything collapsed. I mean, I had that's my brother died that next week. I mean, it was just like all these things. And I think spiritually what happened is when I drove home that day, I drove home with like a fleet of demons or something, because they were probably like, oh yeah.
Joke's on you.
Yeah. And I wasn't born up in church. I made fun of Christians most of my life until I opened my heart to Christ about 10 years ago. But and just seeing that spirit world really come to life, and feeling things and having nudges, and that Holy Spirit, and then the attacks, and just trying to battle it all. Ephesians 6. I probably need to go back and read that today, but it when you become a Christian, and things get better in a lot of ways, but things can get harder in a lot of ways too. But I know that no weapons formed against me shall prosper, and that I serve a big, mighty God, and you do too. And we can use our stories to help others. Romans 8:28, using all that for the glory of God. And yeah.
I mean, like I said, if we've got to go through it, we might as well try to help other people while we're going through it, because there's no point in sitting and wallowing in your self misery when there's other people that are having the same issues. We should band together.
It helps with the healing so much more when you can go and help someone that has that unique pain, a
Mhm.
pain that maybe you never thought was even that big of a deal till you went through it.
Right.
And then you're like, whoa, I'm how naive or how cold of me to think that way. Um, well, I really have enjoyed this.
I've
I
enjoyed
needed
it
this.
too. I've enjoyed it too. And anytime we can get together, you can always come to the atrium, take a look around, take
Yeah,
some pictures, whatever you want to do.
yeah, yeah. That sounds great. Thank you.